Okay, so just talking about, getting just certain conversations. We're talking about economics. We're talking about Black elitists and also certain mentalities. I will bring up this name, Mansa Musa. Uh, you know, and to personally, I call it the Mansa Musa effect. When he went around, going to different places and just disrupting economic systems. I think that was like I said, personally, just my opinion. I think that was the first time where other ethnicities, other races, based on Blumenbach, I think that's the first time, like, where can we get all this money, and how can we attain this? And I think that was like the first onset of going in to the motherland and basically just pillaging all the great resources that it has, and it's still doing to this day. And I think that just brought that, whoever they is, I'll just say that, it's been across the world. And, when I say the Mansa Musa effect, I have gentrification in mind, where, we were, as a community, shifting into certain areas, and well, this is just a Black community, and then come to find out later on, this is high real estate. So how do we get them out, giving them payoffs, and then they flip the property for 3 times what it's worth? How do you think that has really impacted the current state of not only Blacks in America, but Blacks in the world?
Yeah. First of all, everybody need to go check out that king from Mali. Mansa Musa goes on his highs in 1324. I call him the first big baller. He's just throwing out so much gold. He's like, hey, take that. I mean, that he's a big baller, right. and it changes everything. It disrupts the economic base. Let's get to your question here. Let me say this one. I don't believe in economic essentialism, and what do I mean by that? Sometimes people think that everything boils down to the economic dynamics of communities, and everything doesn't boil down to those material aspects. It kind of goes back to that classic Hegel-Marx debate where Hegel is talking about, ideas, your ideology is what really drives everything. Marx comes back and says, no, he turns Hegel on his head and says it's the materials, it's the economics. I think it's both, right? Is that old saying says a fool and his money will soon part? I think a fool and his money rarely meet. And we talk a lot about economics because that's the system that we're placed in America, in this naked capitalist system, which really and truly doesn't work for the majority of people. And people need to understand that. Right now, the top 1% to 2% of the population controls almost half of the wealth in this country. Less than 10% of the people control over 90% of the wealth. I mean, do those numbers on the flip side. So that means like 90% of the people are fighting for doggone 10% of the pie.
Yeah,
that's not sustainable. And that's why. So I think this is dying out as it goes on. But let's speak specifically to this dynamic of gentrification, because people think that that's somehow new. It's not. That's been going on for a long time. And it is race-based. It simply happens in different spaces at different paces. So all of it is around race. So initially you have these white and Black people in these urban cores as cities started to expand. Whites didn't want to live around Blacks. Let me just keep this very, very simple.
Period.
So, whites did not want to live around Blacks, so they moved out. Think of it like as a ring. So you got this urban core, you got one circle. Whites move out to another ring. They establish these quote unquote, first tier suburbs.
Right.
But Blacks who have been socialized to think of something is if it's white, it's better. The ones that could follow the whites out to those first tier suburbs. Whites still didn't want to live with them, so they moved out to second tier suburbs. Some Blacks will move out, but you still have this bleeding out of economic bases in the urban core, which then in most places, Louisville, Atlanta, all of these places became almost totally Black and poor. And when you have that type of economic distress, you're going to have all kinds of other things that happen too. Dollar circulates 18 to 20 times in a white community. Yeah. Dollar circulates less than once in a Black community. Don't have the same services. No matter what city you go to, be it Tulsa, DC, right? Atlanta, you come to Louisville, go to the black side, go to the white side. Like you come to Louisville, you go to the West End, you go to Hurstbourne, Prospect. It's like two different cities.
Yep.
It's completely two different.
Completely different cities. And you hear these same stories all over. But once you deplete those urban cores, they become black, undesirable. Everything is driven down. But they're still the core, right? That's where your downtowns are. That's where, as time changes, out of, the wealthier blacks are trying to move out. Then you get a situation where those property values get driven down. And then you get basically these prospectors, these white looters who will come back into those cores, buy up that property, shoot it up. They'll make it, quote unquote, better, but then they drive black people out. That's what, it's already happened in a lot of cities. It's now starting to happen in Louisville. And I think Atlanta is probably like the last refuge for black people. It's even happening there. You know, I go back home over to the West End in Atlanta, over near Morehouse. And I'm like, whoa, where'd all these white people come from?
Right.
That's how I feel in DC. On U Street.
So it's not saying that white people shouldn't be able to occupy those spaces, but understand what's happening to the black people who used to occupy those spaces.
Sure.
And then the prices are driven up so high that the majority of black people do not have access to them anymore. Remember, the average white family, if we're just going to stick to economics, average white family right now earns a little bit over $50,000 a year. The average black family, a little bit over 30. That's just income. That's just income. All right. Let's not even start talking about wealth. So you see the transformation of these neighborhoods that used to be black dominated, and they've been stripped down. And I think that's the rating of them, whatever we've been able to produce, by hook or crook over the decades of that type of segregation. Even that gets taken, and that's disheartening.
Nothing ever was handed, all about respect, never about ego. Wish I could have retired a long time ago and disappeared way beyond the trees. But my homies kept influencing me, said they needed to hear my lyrics, like my flow, cause they felt my spirit. Plus the people needed to hear it. A conversation with conscientious lyrics.